Claire Morrison stood in the center of the vast council hall, feeling the weight of 12 alien gazes pressing on her like cold stone. The chamber of the Galactic Council expanded before her in flawless circles of gleaming alloy and shimmering lights that seemed to sting human eyes if stared at too long. Each of the 12 species occupied their place along the curved perimeter, their expressions caught somewhere between disdain and sorrow. For 15 years, Claire had served as Earth's ambassador and had walked these halls countless times, yet this day felt unlike any other. The air itself seemed to vibrate with silent judgment, and the metallic floor beneath her boots felt less like firm ground and more like the deck of a sinking ship. Still, Ambassador Morrison drew herself tall, shoulders straight, chin high, though her pulse thudded so hard it made her fingers tremble. Arbitrator Beltar rose from the tribunal's center, his ancient voice rolling through the chamber like distant thunder. The Vorak Elder was older than any human could fathom, his scaled hide marked by scars from wars fought long before Earth even dreamed of neighbors among the stars. When he spoke, each word carried the immovable gravity of law itself. "The tribunal is now in session," Beltar declared, his voice echoing off the walls until it seemed the metal itself spoke through him. "We convene to consider the charges laid against the species known as humanity, and their continued presence within civilized space." A chill tightened in Claire's stomach, but her expression stayed firm. She had known this reckoning would come ever since whispers of human expansion reached the council. Every gesture of goodwill, every alliance offered in peace, had been twisted into something sinister by those who feared transformation more than they cherished progress. "The charges are as follows," Beltar continued, his black eyes fixed on Claire with laser-like focus. "Aggressive expansion beyond approved borders. Technological advancement without sanctioned review. Cultural contamination of protected species. And most severe, deliberate subversion of established social orders through the spread of destabilizing ideologies." Each accusation struck like a hammer, but Claire remained upright. Across the circular chamber, she saw the delegates nodding. The insectoid Krell clicked their mandibles in what she knew to be agreement. The energy forms known as the Pulson shifted colors, tones that meant approval in their radiant language. Even the normally serene Andorans looked stern, almost regretful. "How does the accused species respond?" Beltar demanded, his words hanging heavy in the charged air like smoke refusing to fade. Claire inhaled slowly and stepped forward. She had rehearsed this moment for months, yet the words felt like stones in her throat. "Honorable arbitrator, esteemed members of the council," she began, her voice steady, echoing clearly. "Humanity stands prepared to face these charges and to prove that our path has been led by compassion, not conquest." A wave of disapproval murmured through the chamber, but Claire did not falter. "You accuse us of aggression," she said, "but never have we seized a world by force. Every colony we built rose upon worlds empty or long forsaken. We have displaced no one, claimed no territory that belonged to others." "Yet you spread like infection," interrupted Counselor Zix of the hegemony, his tall gray frame motionless, his voice like ice scraping steel. "In 50 standard years, you have gone from one world to dozens. Consume resources and spread your influence without respect for the natural order," Counselor Zix finished, his tone cutting. Claire felt anger rise within her chest but forced it down, keeping her voice calm. "We grow because we thrive. We explore because we dream of something better. Is it wrong to want homes for our children or to seek new understanding among the stars? When that growth breeds instability, it becomes a disease," Beltar replied, his words like frost. "The tribunal possesses evidence of your species' contamination of 3 protected civilizations. Present the evidence." A shimmering holographic projection bloomed at the center of the chamber, and Claire's stomach sank as the images appeared. She watched human physicians working beside Carrie healers to create new medicines. Engineers from Earth instructing Scorf laborers in advanced construction methods. Teachers from distant colonies sharing lessons with young Nexari, eager to understand the wider cosmos beyond their assigned purposes. "Behold your corruption," declared Councillor Thissy Prime, their luminous form burning crimson with anger. The Kari were content in their brief lives until humans gave them medicine that doubled their years. Now they question why such power was ever denied them. The Scorf accepted their caste order until humans poisoned them with the idea of equality. Now their cities burn in revolt. And the Nexari, once obedient processors, now demand dangerous notions of freedom and identity. Tears pricked Claire's eyes, not from guilt, but pride. The scenes unfolding weren't corruption. They were cooperation. She saw compassion, partnership, and the spark of shared discovery. "What you call contamination," she said firmly, "we call friendship. What you call danger, we call progress." The Kari no longer die young from curable sickness. The Scorf now raise cities that rival any world in this council. The Nexari create art, music, and poetry even as they uphold your networks. Where is the crime in helping others become more than they were? The crime, Beltar intoned, voice like the closing of a vault, lies in the chaos that follows. Order sustains peace. Hierarchy sustains civilization. When you teach lesser species to question their place, you endanger all we have built. Lesser species? Claire's composure cracked, her voice rising. There are no lesser species, only people, each with their own gifts and dreams. The Kari heal in ways beyond human comprehension. The Scorf build with artistry that humbles our engineers. The Nexari think faster than our brightest minds. We haven't corrupted them. We've learned from one another. That is what friendship is. But as her words echoed, Claire could see they were meaningless here. The verdict had been decided long before she entered this room. This was not a hearing, it was a formality. Her fate and humanity's had already been written. From the shadows behind her, Admiral Jake Sullivan stepped forward. His uniform was immaculate, his posture unyielding. But Claire could see the fury burning behind Jake's steady expression. "If I may speak," he said, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had commanded fleets in the dark between stars. "The Council recognizes Admiral Sullivan," Beltar said reluctantly. Jake stepped up beside Claire, and she felt a flicker of strength return just from his presence. They had known each other since the academy, partners in survival through countless battles. "I've fought beside many of the species gathered here," Jake began. "I've bled beside Andorian warriors and shared rations with Krell soldiers. I've seen courage and honor in every corner of this galaxy, and I know that cooperation, not isolation, is what makes us strong." "Your point, Admiral?" Beltar asked, irritation creeping into his voice. "My point," Jake said bluntly, "is that you're about to make the greatest mistake in galactic history. Humanity has never been your enemy. We never sought conquest or domination. We've only ever tried to be good neighbors and loyal friends. Cast us out now, and you lose more than you gain." "The Council's decision is final," Beltar declared, rising to his full towering height. "The species known as humanity is hereby deemed a destabilizing influence within the borders of civilized space. You are banished to the outer rim, beyond the 47th parallel. All human colonies and outposts must be evacuated within 6 standard months. Any human found within Council territory after that time will be treated as an enemy combatant." The words struck like a death knell, echoing off the cold metal walls. Claire felt the weight of 40 million lives crash onto her shoulders. Families, settlements, dreams, all condemned to exile by those too afraid of change. This was not justice. It was fear-made law. "This session is concluded," Beltar said, turning away as though humanity had already vanished from the ledger of existence. As Claire and Jake walked the long corridors of the station for what both knew would be the last time, they passed 3 figures waiting in a quiet alcove. The Scorf delegate approached first and pressed something small and warm into Claire's palm. "Star charts," he whispered in accented standard. "Hidden worlds in the rim, empty but not lifeless." Next came the Kari representative, her amphibian eyes glistening with sorrow. "Ancient ruins on Kepler 442c," she murmured. "Our ancestors spoke of wonders there, but we were forbidden to explore. Perhaps you will find what we could not." Finally, the Nexari ambassador drifted forward, their voice crackling through a mechanical translator. "The network remembers its friends," it said softly. 6 months later, the last human transport crossed the invisible border that marked the edge of Council space and entered the unknown reaches of the Outer Rim. The exodus was unlike anything in human history. 40 million souls packed their lives into whatever ships could carry them into the dark. Cargo haulers became transports, warships became floating cities, research vessels turned into lifeboats of knowledge and hope, all bound for exile. Dr. Helen Carter pressed her face to the viewport of the flagship New Geneva and watched the stars shift as they moved deeper into uncharted territory. The constellations were alien, unfamiliar patterns scattered across a blackness that felt thicker, older. Even space itself seemed changed here, as though time had forgotten to move. "No sign of habitable worlds," reported Captain Rico Valdez from the bridge of his scout ship Endeavor. His voice crackled through the fleet-wide channel. Once a smuggler, Rico knew the dark between stars better than anyone. If there was something hidden out there, he'd find it. Helen turned to her workstation, her fingers scrolling through streams of data. As the fleet's chief scientist, it was her duty to find them a home. So far, the Rim was living up to its reputation, a graveyard of dead worlds and frozen giants. The star maps gifted by the Scorf marked dozens of systems, but each seemed colder, emptier than the last. "Wait!" Rico's voice came again, sharper now, electric with excitement. "I'm picking up something strange on the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Not a planet, something solid, but it's not registering properly on the scanners." Admiral Sullivan appeared on Helen's comm screen, a faint spark of hope in his tired eyes. After 3 weeks of fruitless searching, they had almost lost faith. Supplies were dwindling, and many of the improvised life support systems were failing. "Take us in for a closer look," Jake ordered. The New Geneva shifted course, and the scattered human fleet followed in formation. As they drew closer, Helen's instruments began to flicker with readings that made no sense. The object was roughly the size of a small moon, but composed of materials beyond identification. Energy signatures pulsed deep within, steady and strong. "It's artificial," Helen breathed, eyes wide. "I'm reading metal alloys that don't exist in any Council database and active power sources inside. Someone built this, and they built it to last." Jake stepped up beside her, studying the readouts with a soldier's instinct. "Could it be a Council installation? Something they forgot to mention?" Helen shook her head. "No. The architecture's nothing like theirs. The decay patterns? This thing's ancient, Jake. Millions of years old." The artificial moon filled their screens as the fleet approached. Its surface was a forest of impossible geometry, spiraling towers that obeyed unknown mathematics, vast domes like glass frozen mid-breath, and colossal gateways carved into cliffs that rose from the surface like the bones of gods, surface like frozen waves. "I'm detecting atmosphere inside several structures," reported the sensor officer. "Breathable for humans with minor adjustment. Stable temperature, no radiation or biological threats." Jake made the call that would alter humanity's future forever. "We're going in. Rico, take the Endeavor ahead and scout. Helen, assemble a full science team. If this place is as ancient as you think, it might hold the answers we need." The landing team consisted of Helen and 5 scientists, accompanied by a squad of Marines under Sergeant Lisa Martinez. Their shuttle descended through a thin, shimmering atmosphere that wrapped around the artificial moon. Towering structures rose all around them like the ruins of titans. Helen's scanners went wild as they pierced an invisible energy field surrounding the largest dome. "Whatever it is, it's not hostile," Helen reported to Jake, her voice steady despite the awe in her chest. "It feels more like a scan, as if something's studying us." The shuttle touched down on a platform that seemed purpose-built. For them, though it had been forged millions of years before humanity's birth. The surface was smooth, unmarred by age. When the team stepped out, they found the artificial gravity perfectly matched to human comfort. As they neared the main structure, a massive doorway slid open with effortless grace, revealing softly glowing corridors where the walls themselves seemed alive with light. The architecture was beautiful, yet alien, its lines harmonious, its purpose unfathomable. Then a voice spoke. "Welcome," it said, echoing from every direction at once. The language was unknown, yet Helen understood every word instinctively. "I have waited a long time for your kind." The Marines raised their weapons, but Helen raised a hand to halt them. Whatever presence spoke didn't feel threatening. It felt ancient, familiar somehow. "Who are you?" she asked, her words trembling slightly. "I am what my creators named the Architect," the voice replied. Instantly, the walls shimmered to life, painting the air with images, scenes of empires spanning galaxies, of beings both brilliant and serene. "My makers ruled this galaxy before your council's ancestors learned to count the stars. They called themselves the predecessors. Like you, they dreamed, explored, and built." Helen stood transfixed. The visions showed cities adrift among the clouds of gas giants, ships crossing intergalactic space in the blink of an eye. But more than their power, what shone through was their hunger for knowledge, for growth without domination. "What happened to them?" Helen whispered, though she already sensed the truth. "They evolved beyond form," the architect answered. "They became light, thought, energy. Before they ascended, they left monuments such as this, repositories of their knowledge and craft, waiting for the next species worthy to inherit their legacy." Sergeant Martinez stepped forward, weapon still at the ready. "Why tell us this? Why humans?" The architect's tone seemed to smile. "Because you arrived not as conquerors, but as exiles. You seek to build, not to destroy, to learn, not to rule. My creators valued those qualities above all others." Helen's breath caught. "You mean we can access their technology? All of it?" "You may earn it," the architect corrected gently. "Knowledge without wisdom brings ruin. Power without restraint breeds extinction. Prove that your species has learned this, and you will inherit what was left behind." Jake's voice crackled through Helen's comm, demanding a status update, but she barely heard him. Her mind raced, imagining the possibilities. Technology that could reshape matter itself. Ships that could cross the galaxy in days. Medicine that could extend life by centuries. The chance to build a civilization guided by understanding instead of fear. "What must we do?" she asked softly. "Learn," the architect replied. "Grow. Become more than you were. And when the time comes, help others do the same. The galaxy stagnates under the weight of fear. It needs those who will rekindle its flame." 5 years later, the Outer Rim no longer felt like exile. Humanity had flourished among the forgotten stars. 17 star systems now bore the marks of their resilience, cities rising from dead worlds once dismissed as. Zephyrian energy beams lanced through the void, weaving brilliant threads of light that intersected with human plasma fire and the Harmonian's gravitational distortions. The battlefield became a storm of color and chaos, where physics itself seemed to bend under the weight of combined technologies never meant to coexist. Forge-born warships, massive and ancient, moved through the inferno like titans, their armor glowing from the heat of enemy fire yet refusing to break. Each time a council cruiser unleashed a barrage, the Alliance responded with precision born of desperation and newfound unity. Maria watched the battle unfold from the command station, every explosion reflected in her eyes. Reports poured in, losses, victories, cries for help. But amid the chaos, a pattern emerged. The Alliance was learning. Human ingenuity adapted to alien unpredictability with breathtaking speed. Zephyrian energy fields reinforced human shields, while Harmonian song-guided gravity wells turned enemy projectiles into harmless spirals of light. Jake's voice carried over the comms, calm and steady even as the command deck trembled from distant detonations. "Hold the line. Remember what we're fighting for." His words became a beacon across the fleet, binding soldiers and civilians alike into something greater than survival, a cause. The first Council dreadnought fell when Thax's strategy unfolded perfectly. Forge-born ships feigned retreat, drawing the enemy into the heart of a Harmonian resonance field that amplified Zephyrian discharge to catastrophic levels. The dreadnought's shields flared white-hot before collapsing entirely, and moments later it erupted in a silent bloom of fire that lit the stars. Cheers echoed across comm channels, but Jake didn't celebrate. He could see what the others couldn't, the remaining Council ships converging into a tight formation around their largest vessel. "They're preparing the planet crackers," he realized grimly. "Target coordinates?" Elena demanded. "New Hope," Thax answered, his mechanical tone devoid of emotion. Maria's heart nearly stopped. The diplomatic station, the heart of everything they'd built, was directly in the weapon's sights. "We can't intercept in time," she whispered. Jake's hand hovered over the controls of the flagship's main weapon system. "Maybe we don't have to," he said softly. "Architect, if you can hear me, we could use a little of that wisdom you promised." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the stars themselves seemed to tremble. A vast lattice of light unfolded around the Alliance fleet, a construct of energy and design far beyond any species' comprehension. The architect's voice filled every ship, calm and resonant. "You have learned more than you realize. Now, stand together." The lattice absorbed the full power of the Council's planet-cracking weapon, bending it inward until the energy collapsed in on itself. A moment later, the Council's flagship disintegrated in a cascade of brilliant light. The remaining ships fled, their formations broken, and their will shattered. Silence settled over the battlefield as the Alliance ships drifted among the wreckage. Maria felt tears streak her cheeks. "We did it," she whispered. Jake exhaled slowly, the weight of 5 years of struggle easing from his shoulders. "No," he said. "We earned it." In the months that followed, the Rim Alliance became more than an experiment. It became a symbol. Former enemies worked side by side to rebuild. The architect's guidance continued, not as a command, but as mentorship. Humanity and their allies stood on the threshold of a new age, one where cooperation, not conquest, defined the measure of greatness, air steady and suitable for creatures who had evolved under scores of varied suns. As the Alliance coordinator, Maria carried the tough task of maintaining peace between peoples who had learned to mistrust everyone but themselves. The neglected communities of the Rim had spent centuries hiding from the wider galaxy, so cooperation was hard-won for them. Each people arrived with their own fears, biases, and cultural taboos that required navigation with the careful precision of a surgeon operating on a beating heartbeat. The Zephyrians were beings of pure radiance who scarcely comprehended tangible matter, let alone the emotions and needs of flesh and blood creatures. They communicated in pulses of EM radiation that needed translation by machines, and their notion of a friendly greeting was to flood nearby electrical systems with excess power. Maria learned to carry spare communicators whenever she met their ambassadors, because the first few always got fried within minutes of any exchange. The Harmonians were simpler to deal with in some ways, yet in others more perilous than the energy beings. They appeared as crystalline entities that vibrated at frequencies capable of shattering glass or soothing the fiercest creature depending on mood. Their songs could shape gravity and electromagnetic fields in ways that made human scientists gasp with envy, but they were horribly sensitive to emotional currents. A single harsh word could plunge a Harmonian into a furious resonance that took hours to calm. The Forgeborn were perhaps the oddest of the Rim species, because they did not match any biological definition of life. They had been forged as weapons by a long-dead civilization and abandoned when their creators collapsed in some ancient catastrophe. Part machine and part something other, they existed in a liminal state that rendered them formidable warriors and profoundly wary of anyone attempting to get close. Commander Elena Klov had been the first human to win a Forgorns. Trust when she rescued a scout from a council patrol that had wandered too far into the Rim. A machine hybrid named Thax emerged from that debt and became something like a military advisor to Alliance forces. His grasp of tactics and strategy eclipsed anything human commanders had known, though mercy and compassion remained awkward concepts for him. Natural instincts to organic minds he could not easily process. Council fleet approaching from the galactic north, Thax reported to the Alliance command through his mechanical voice synthesizer. 12 ships, 3 heavy cruisers, and a dreadnought. Weapons charged, shields at full. They come for war, not parley. Elena watched the tactical display showing the incoming council squadrons and felt the old pre-battle tension tighten her gut. This was the moment everyone had feared. The council could not allow the Alliance to expand without a response. The question was whether humanity and its new partners were ready for the test about to begin. How long until they reach Alliance space? Elena asked, checking the charge level on her sidearm by habit. 4 standard hours, Thax replied, his mechanical eyes glowing with something like anticipation. They will likely strike the mining operations in the Kepler system first. It is our most exposed position. Its destruction would send a message to others considering joining us. Anger rose in Maria like a fire that threatened to burn through her diplomatic restraint. The mining station in question housed 300 humans and twice that number of aliens from 4 species. They were not combatants, but families trying to make a life in the Rim's forgotten reaches. The thought that the council would attack simply to score a political point made her want to scream. "We must warn them," she said, but Elena was already shaking her head. "We tried contacting them 20 minutes ago," the commander replied, her voice carrying the weary calm of someone who had delivered bad news too often. "The council is jamming communications in that sector. To the miners, it seems like an ordinary day." Admiral Jake Sullivan entered the command center with a measured, efficient stride, the gait of a man who had spent his life training for moments like this. His hair had silvered in 5 years on the Rim, but his eyes still burned with the resolve that had carried their people this far. "Status. Dark hours," he demanded, and Elena gave a concise briefing on the approaching council fleet. Jake listened without interruption. Maria watched his mind calculate tactical permutations like a living computer. "They expect us to run," he said at last, a cold smile touching his lips. "They think we're still the refugees who fled their space 5 years ago. They have no idea what we've become." Crystal Singer Harmonial entered with the flowing grace her species displayed. Her crystalline form caught and refracted light into rainbows, while her voice wove harmonies that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Her words carried overtones beyond any translator's reach. "The deep songs tell us the fleet bears weapons meant to crack planets," she sang, and the melody pressed the weight of that threat onto every heart in the room. "They do not come to capture or intimidate. They come to destroy everything we have built." Jake's face hardened as he understood the scope. Planet crackers. They plan to glass every world within Alliance space. "That would be genocide," Maria whispered, feeling physically ill imagining children and families burned alive. "It is a lesson," Thax corrected in his flat mechanical tone. "The Council intends to show other species what befalls those who defy their authority. They will broadcast the devastation across galactic networks as a warning." Elena's hands moved across the tactical console as she coordinated a response. Ships scattered across dozens of systems began to move toward predetermined rally points. Human vessels fitted with predecessor tech took station alongside Zaharian energy ships and Harmonian gravity manipulators. The Forgeborn contributed their ancient warships, engines of conflict from eras that made current galactic politics seem like playground squabbles. "We have 43 ships ready for combat," Elena reported as fleet composition solidified on the displays against.